continue on that same strategy of what to look for in this whole sealing, repair, and replace world is that you need to remove the component carefully. And I know you might be upset. You may not see it. It may, it may be falling into your hands. But the reason that you are is that you'd like to see some evidence, maybe. And during this whole process, so let's say you take a water pump off. It's not necessarily only head gaskets or intakes. It's a water pump or oil pan or really any gasket application. So the reason you're trying to be so careful on this removal is let's say a water pump, for example, and there's a leak and it's pretty apparent. You've reviewed it. You can see where it's coming out. What you really want to know is why and how. So you may be surprised that someone might have been in there, 5,000 miles ago and simply never tightened the fastener down. So it's good to be aware of all the fasteners that hold whatever that component is. While it's really important for hard gaskets, it's just as important for all the soft gasket applications. If someone left a bolt loose and it leaks, well, then there's really nothing but, installation error, and you can fix that. So if that's the case and you find a fastener's loose, you'd be surprised when you pull that out how you probably will not see the gasket won't be adhered to anything, and it'll usually fall right to the floor where you've made good contact with the gasket material and it's in contact with the block or the component or whatever it may be. You'll usually have a little bit of adhesion there, and where you really don't have the right amount of bolt load, you'll see that maybe it's slipped away. So that's how the leak, the coolant or the oil or whatever it may be, went on top or below the surface of the gasket because there really wasn't enough load. Even though maybe it's a static environment and not pressure, it's still just from laying there over time, it wicked or leaked. So that's one key thing to kind of take notice when you're taking, whatever the component is apart, just to make sure that all the bolts were tight. I mean, it can save you some time down the road. So, that's certainly one thing you need to look for. Certainly the fasteners all needed to be tight. And I'm not telling you have to go through a complicated series of torque loss measurements, but you'll kind of know either they're tight or they're not. So the other thing that can sometimes get in the way of this is simply it's a poor installation. They didn't get it, and this happens many times when it's a push-in-place O-ring type, is that it was a rush scenario. Somebody didn't really clean out the cover carefully. So as a result of that, they rushed it through. They didn't get all the oil. They didn't get all the burnt oil that's inside that groove. You really have to have all of those three-dimensional gaskets pushed as far in as you possibly can, or they just won't work. They're designed that way, so you have the right amount of compressibility. Some guys just aren't patient. They don't clean it out. So what they end up doing is they force it. They dry the top off with brake clean. They try and glue it on. They try and force the repair. So now on the repair side, when you tighten up the fasteners, there's no place for this rubber piece to go. So it just extrudes, comes out of the groove, and it leaks. Or they just simply put it in wrong in the first place, didn't even go through all that bother, and literally it's fallen out. So those are a couple of things to pay attention. So if you have one of these three-dimensional pieces that you're concerned is leaking and you can't understand why, it may simply have been a poor installation that caused all these problems, or they just smeared it with silicone so it just cruised right out of there once you installed it. There was just too much lubrication, not enough friction, not enough to hold that piece in place, so it slid right out of the groove. There was nothing there to hold it. So take a good look at all of these things, and maybe just a good cleanup. Make sure it's all clean and dry, and you put it together right. And this troublesome application that these people have been fighting for a while maybe wasn't that hard off after all if the repair would have been done correctly.